It is my pleasure to welcome you all to our very first annual First Gen Symposium. Alongside me are the rest of the leadership team, Brondie Vien, our vice chair, Isa Sanchez, our blog editor, and Chelsea Jones, our social media coordinator and webmaster. At the First Generation Student Group, our mission is to empower, support, and advocate for our first generation students as we navigate our academic and professional journeys together. Today, we have a really inspiring program lined up that highlights the resilience, challenges, and successes of first generation folks as they navigate academia and the professional world. We'd also like to take a moment to thank everyone for taking time out of their very busy schedules to attend. We'd like to thank our speaker, Dr. Luna Nájera, and our panelists, Marina Corrales, Kassandra Dineen, and Laura Garand. We were going to open today with Dr. Chow. However, very importantly, he was pulled away to an incredibly important meeting, and he did share his remarks with us today, and we would like to share those now. So take it away, Brondie.
All right, thank you. Good morning and welcome to the First Generation Symposium at San Jose State University School of Information. I regret that I cannot join you live today as I have been called to a special Institute of Museum and Library Services meeting in Arizona. Nonetheless, I am thrilled about this inaugural event, which celebrates the resilience, achievements, and unique experiences of first-generation students and professionals. Today, we come together to uplift and empower one another, sharing stories, insights, and strategies for success. The First Gen Symposium joins the iSchool's roster of annual symposia, creating a dedicated space to recognize and support first-generation graduate students and professionals. With 50 to 60% of iSchool graduate students being first-generation professionals and nearly half of also first-generation college graduates, this event serves as a crucial platform to acknowledge the challenges and triumphs of this vibrant community. Beyond personal stories, this symposium fosters critical dialogue about how institutions can better support first-gen students in academia and beyond. As you engage with our inspiring keynote speaker, panelists, and discussions, I encourage you to reflect on your journey and the impact of mentorship, perseverance, and knowledge sharing. Thank you for being part of this event, and I look forward to hearing about the enriching and empowering conversations that unfold today.
We thank Dr. Chow for taking time to send this message and for their continued support of first-generation students. Dr. Chow's words truly highlight the importance of spaces like this, where we can share our experiences and learn from one another, and to most importantly, celebrate the resilience of our community.
I'm very excited to facilitate this portion of the symposium. In this panel discussion, we will explore the diverse experiences of first-generation students and professionals navigating academic and career spaces. We are honored to have such an amazing group of panelists with us today, each bringing their own unique perspective and journey to the conversation. Instead of me reading off their bios, I will hand it over to them to introduce themselves in their own words. Panelists, could you each please take a moment to share a little bit about yourselves, your background, your field, and what being a first generation means to you?
My name is Marina. I am currently in the MLIS program at San Jose State University, and I'm also a student at Santa Clara University. And my research is on how to make students of color feel more welcome in academic libraries, because I think it's something that uses a deficit lens a lot and asks students to conform to spaces that weren't built for them. So how can we change that?
Thank you.
Hello, I am Laura. I graduated from the MLIS program last May. I currently work in the information field, and yeah, that's me. I was the chair of the first gen group for 2 years before I left, and then I recruited Casey.
Thank you, Laura.
With that, I'll just go because Laura recruited me. I'm Casey McConnell. I'm a current student in the MLIS program, about halfway through. I actually have worked in libraries for almost a decade. I am currently a teen services para-librarian. It is a job I love dearly, and it's very, very close to my heart. I think teen services is a very under-resourced part of the library, and it's something that I would love to continue to make better. I also am the first in my family to have attempted college. But I did it much later in life. I didn't get my bachelor's degree until I was 40 years old. So I am now in a master's program at almost 44. So it's a different avenue. Thanks. I'll pass it over to Kassandra.
Hi, I'm Cassandra. Cassie, either is fine. I did my undergrad at Boston College, grew up in the Boston area, and then I started at San Jose and earned my MLIS in May of 2023. I now live in Chicago. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys for those introductions, and nice meeting you guys. I think this is the first time I'm speaking to you guys as well. So let's just dive into our discussion. I wanted to start our discussion on the theme of personal journeys and identities as first-generation students and professionals. I think the structure of this panel discussion, if you don't want to answer the question, totally fine. But my first question is, first-generation students often carry cultural values and traditions into their academic journeys. Can you guys share one tradition or value or mindset from your family or culture that shaped your school experience, and one that you maybe want to even unlearn?
I think for me, the first thing that comes to mind is wanting to or feeling like you have to figure out things on your own, and being reluctant to ask for help because we're used to figuring out things on our own. And it's a different experience to say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. And I wish we could unlearn that, but it takes longer than it should.
I would actually wholeheartedly agree. That's the first thing, that is, take all the responsibility upon yourself. Don't ask for help, because if you do ask for help, you're a burden to others. So that's very much part of the culture of my upbringing, is that having that that layer of guilt and shame about asking for help. So when you've gone into something like this by yourself, and then you don't have a framework of somebody to ask. I can't ask my parents if that was, how do I navigate the FAFSA, or how do I do any of these types of things? What does that actually mean when nobody has done it before? And then that guilt comes in going, well, why should I ask somebody else? I need to know this myself. So, and then that's kind of almost somewhat layered in with perfectionism too, because you must push forward and do it yourself, but do it perfectly, and be really upset with yourself when you do it wrong.
I think too, it can even go like a step further, to the point where not only I'm working on it, but not only do I not ask for help, but then my family has learned to always come to me with everything. So then not only am I like figuring my own stuff out, but I'm then taking on everything that they need help with. If they need to navigate a lawyer, or if they need help with a government form or anything like that, that's also put on my plate. And then I can't say no, because I'm the smart one, right? Because I've been to university. And again, they're not doing it on purpose. That it's flattering in a way that they see me as this person that has all these resources and can always figure everything out. But then again, sometimes like it comes down to it just being so heavy on your plate, and then not being able to say, I can't do this, or not being able to get that returned help because you can't bring yourself to put anything on their plate. So yeah, I'm learning. Like this past summer, I finally kind of like, I had like a huge breakdown with my family and was like, hey, I'm going through all of this. And they were like, we had no idea. And they were good. They were like, it's our turn to help you. You help us with everything. But it was like, okay, finally, I've like taken this step of like sometimes I need to give you guys something because I can't always take everything. And I think it can get there really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Like it's helped you get this far in life, but also, I feel like it kind of hinders you in a way too, not knowing how to ask for help and reaching this point of your life where we're adults and we have to unlearn a lot of these habits. For sharing.
For sure.
So next question, navigating, family, I think we touched on this a little bit as well. Navigating family expectations can be challenging. How did your family react to your decision to attend grad school? And was there a moment or a conversation that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I think I'll kick it off just because this one immediately. My family thought, I think they were entertaining the idea that I had gotten a bachelor's degree with, okay, that's just something that they want to do, and that's cool. But when I told my dad that I was going to go to grad school, his first reaction to me was, "No, why are you going to do that?" That was his initial reaction of like, well, Dad, in order to be a fully fledged librarian, you do actually need a master's degree. And so I think that there was this, like, well, why would you need to do more? You did the one thing. Stick with that. That's fine. You made the race. You ran through the finish line. You don't need another finish line. And I think that's a concept that people who perhaps chose not to go to college or didn't go to college for a myriad of reasons, which were my parents, was that this is just, why would you want to go and spend more money and more time and time away from everybody else by doing that? Yeah.
I think I had almost the opposite, where when I finished my bachelor's, my mom didn't really understand that I wasn't able to get like a high-paying, successful job right away. I remember like 4 months after I graduated, I was working at a Barnes and Noble, and she was like, "Well, why don't you have a career for yourself yet?" So I think when I decided to pursue my master's, she was like really hopeful that that would, push me in the direction that she was hoping I would go in.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, anybody that has been around will, I always share this, so it might be like you might have heard it before. But yeah, it was interesting with my family, and it's really evolved over time. But at the beginning, kind of went through phases. So they really didn't take it seriously. Just they didn't understand like why I wanted to be there or why I had any inclination to do that. And so it was a lot of like, my mom and my sister would text me and be like, "Hey, let's hang out," or "Let's go do this." And I would say, "I can't, I have school," or "I'm studying." And they would just be like angry that I wasn't willing to skip my classes or ditch my homework to spend time with them. So there was like kind of a hostility there for a while. It was really bad with my brother. So he kind of took on this, immediately took on this like air of, "Well, you obviously think that you're better than all of us now because you went to school." And so every time we had any kind of disagreement, his immediate response was, "You're not smarter than me," or "You're not better than me." And I was like, I never said that. I'm just telling you that it's a myth that people swallow spiders in their sleep. Like, it's fine. Relax. But so it was like, it got really, so we kind of like learned to navigate it. And then I think as time went by, and they realized that like it really didn't change who I was, and I never like lorded anything over them, and it wasn't about them. It was most certainly about me and what I was doing and just kind of what I wanted out of my life. They really like, they have really flipped their stance on it, and they're like incredibly supportive now. And like, I mean, they're always asking questions about what I'm doing because they don't understand the difference between a bachelor's or a master's or a PhD or anything like that, which is fine. I don't need them to. But anytime I tell them something, they're like cheerleading, and they're happy, and they're excited, and calling me a nerd, but lovingly. And so it's been a nice like transition to have this supportive space, but it was an adjustment for them because they just didn't understand like the need to do this, because we just grew up never ever talking about it, right? Like, so yeah, it was interesting.
I kind of had the same experience with my sibling. She, because I think when I had got awarded, so when I was given a chance to get my bachelor's degree from the California State Library, and I think I had made a social media post about it. I said, I'll be the first in my family to graduate from college. And her initial reaction was, well, I went to school. She's a hairdresser. So in that way, when I said it kind of belittled her experience at the same time, where I was like, she did actually finish school. It was different. It was a trade school, which she's a brilliant hairstylist and she's really good at her job. I kind of belittled her experience, not thinking what I had said, but I didn't realize that she had so much of that shame, I guess perhaps built into that I was endeavoring to do something that no one in our family had done, but that didn't necessarily resonate with her because she's like, well, I did do something after high school. I did go to beauty school. So yeah, sometimes I almost forget my own experience, that just because I'm going through it doesn't mean that somebody else isn't experiencing something in another way.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing too. I really just had to like take a step back from it. And I think it really came down to me just like realizing that it was about them working through it and not about me pursuing what I'm pursuing. And so I just really kind of disengaged from any kind of like arguments for quite a while and just let him do his thing, because it was the most hostile with my brother. And he processed it in his own way. And now we can have very like respectful conversations and disagreements. And there's no more like putting words in my mouth that I think I'm, smarter or whatever, because I've never felt that way. And so it's definitely a better place. But yeah, he needed to process his own thing, right?
Yeah, definitely.
My experience was different. My mom earned a college degree and my dad didn't. So I'm a first generation graduate student. So my experience was there was an expectation for me to get an undergraduate degree. And there was also an expectation that I wouldn't struggle while I was doing it. That came from my family, I think, but it also came from the institution, because if one of your parents graduate, you're not eligible for the same types of support services. And I read about second generation shaky. It's a term that Dr. Treasure Shield Redmond coined. And it's really about if your parents went to college, and they were the first generation, they probably just figured it out and survived getting through. So that doesn't mean that they'll be able to help you in the same way that somebody who has a legacy of people going to college will be able to. I also think that there's a different kind of pressure, because when you are second generation like I am, there's an expectation that you'll do better than your parents did. And my two best friends, I'm godmother to both of their children, and I hear them all the time like, well, I'm providing them all of these different things. They need to do better than I did. And one of them is an architect and one of them's a registered nurse. And I just try to tell them, you can't imagine the pressure that that's putting on them, and not being able to reach that bar. But I think some of it still comes out, right? Because I interview first generation undergraduate students and I hear them talk about, I feel guilty for using resources because somebody else might need it more than I do. And as somebody who wants to support them, I'm like, no, that's crazy. But then I caught myself the other day as a first generation graduate student thinking the same thing. Like, oh, maybe I shouldn't bother my advisor because he needs to help somebody else. Somebody else needs more help. So that I think whatever phase of school you're in is also an issue that comes up.
Gosh, that's so true.
Yeah. What resonated most with me was what you mentioned about, essentially comparing your experience with someone else's and thinking that maybe they need the resources more and kind of just taking the back seat in terms of, also asking for help. And I think as first generation students, we tend to do that a lot, especially, when it comes with family as well. We tend to also, we're navigating their feelings about, us making this decision to pursue higher education while also dealing with our own feelings and our experiences. So, you guys, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to dive into the next question. Building relationships in academic and professional spaces can feel very unfamiliar as a first generation student, as we've touched on. How have your experiences shaped the way that you approach mentorship, networking, and collaboration?
I feel uniquely, this is something that's actually a part of my regular job, is that I work with teen services, but I also have a group of teens that that volunteer. And it ends up being mostly like a mentorship where these teens work with me closely. And I think that because I've had such a difficult experience getting to school, and these kids are at the preface, they're like right there about to go off to college. A lot of the time we talk about it, and they are very open about their experiences, whether their parents have gone or have not gone. And I think the biggest thing in mentoring with them is that I don't lead. I lead by example, but I tell my story, but I do not say this is the only pathway to do the thing that you need to do. Because a lot of kids don't necessarily want the same things that you may want. And so remembering that even when you are mentoring and when you are helping someone out, that it's your experience for yourself, but remembering that other people had a million different avenues getting to that point. Yeah.
In my undergrad experience, I was part of a 2-week first gen orientation going into my freshman year. And one of the things that stood out to me in that program was they told us every semester pick one professor that you can really build a strong, lasting relationship with. And I think that really helped me get through my undergrad experience. And then I try to do the same at San Jose, and now in my professional career, I try to always find a manager or a supervisor, and it might not always be my direct manager or supervisor, but someone that can offer me advice or help me further my career in some way. So,
Definitely.
I can honestly say that I am bad at networking and finding mentors. It's not something I'm good at. Again, I think it's a feeling of not wanting to ask for help that I'm working through. I recognize that it's a problem and I want to be able to ask for help. So I don't have advice except for recognize that you should be looking for these things. You should be networking. You should be looking for mentors, because it can really only help you.
Yeah, I can definitely relate with that, just because I'm definitely intimidated by the idea of networking and having to put myself out there. And also, I think finding the right mentors is very important, because you can't just, reach out to anyone. I think we also have to think specifically about how if we were to reach out to this person, how they would align with our own professional and even just personal goals.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I think a lot of these things carry on further than you expect them to as well. Like Cassie, your example about finding professors that you can develop relationships with. I'm still very close with 4 of my undergrad professors, and they still just recently wrote PhD recommendation letters for me, as well as Dr. Bernier did. And so these things, it's not just that you have a mentor while you're in it, because once you move on to something else, those people will often still come back into play and still come and be helpful in other ways that you didn't expect, right? Because they're still there as that support system that you've kind of developed. I'm same as Marina, I'm very bad at networking. It is also something I'm working on. And sometimes I just have to like consider how thankful I am for like the relationships I managed to cultivate then, and remind myself how important it is to try to keep doing that so that I have more of that in the future. But yeah, it's definitely a work in progress as well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, I think it's another thing that we can also hang on to is just, I guess, reframing the idea of networking, just like, reframing imposter syndrome. And, speaking of imposter syndrome, this leads us into some of the challenges that first generation students face while navigating these spaces. My next question is, can you guys share a time where this, imposter syndrome felt that it was something that you had to push through, or, what helped you guys push through the challenges of dealing with imposter syndrome?
I was reading the chat a little bit, and I agree that part of it is vulnerability. And I think that for me, instead of looking for mentors or anything like that, I really leaned on my peers because many of my peers were first generation and were going through the same feelings. And part of it is being vulnerable and being the first one to say, like, hey, I'm not sure I'm supposed to be here. Like, it might be a mistake that they let me in. And then realizing that other people feel the same way. But as an outsider, you can see how great someone else is. So it's good to have those relationships so that when you're feeling down and not sure if you can push through, you have that support system to rely on.
That's so true. I'm very lucky to have a supervisor who is a realist, who will tell me when when the imposter syndrome hits real hard. She will turn to me and go, look, I went to the same school. I did the same program. You're doing enough. And she constantly reminds me of that. And sometimes I think you need someone in your corner because we may have had someone in our corner, but we haven't always had someone in our corner, or there's many different ways that is experienced. I feel like I'm alone in this. I don't have anybody. So if I'm sitting in a room with a bunch of people who are using academic words, I know them, but I feel out of place. So then I'm like, am I supposed to be here? Even for something like this today, I felt it. I felt like, oh my gosh, I have to interview someone I respect very, very much. Am I supposed to be here? Is this supposed to be where I'm at? Am I really uniquely qualified for this? And actually someone yesterday told me, yeah, you are. And it was someone at work and someone that I went, okay, I'm ready for this. I can do it. So I think if there's just, even if it's something as simple as a 2-minute conversation and sharing that you're nervous about something, or sharing that I'm terrified to apply to school, or whatever it is, that someone hears that story and can help you out. And it does tie back to what Marina said about vulnerability, because being vulnerable nobody wants to be vulnerable no matter where you come from. But having to do it, I think, is what we need to learn.
I think a huge realization that I had as well on the whole imposter syndrome thing, and like I switched majors like 3 years in. I went from an honors psych student to a classics student in like my 3rd or 4th year or something. So I remember, and I had been a minor before, so I had some background, but I remember going into those like 3,000 level courses, like absolutely thinking, I don't think I should be here. Like everybody's going to know so much more than me. I'm going to be so behind. And the best thing I think that could have happened was somebody asked a question and the prof just said, I don't know. I'm going to have to look it up and I'll let you know next class. And I was like, you can do that? Like, you don't have to know. I'm like, this man went to Oxford and he's just like admitting he doesn't know and he's just going to like look it up. And I was like, it sounds so simple and ridiculous, but like in my first gen brain, it was very much like, these people are going to know all of the information and I'm not going to know any of the information. And then to see somebody who was like, top of the game, the professor, PhD, didn't have the answer on the top of his head. And that was perfectly acceptable. It was super eye-opening. And it was like, oh, well, I can for sure find that answer too. So like, I can be here. And obviously, like, it's a rotation, right? Some days are like, I am killing this. And some days I'm like, why did they hire me? I don't know what I'm doing. But it comes and goes, right? But yeah, just trusting myself that just because I don't know it off the top of my head doesn't mean I'm not qualified as the right person to find the answer. And so I think that reframing has been a huge help with that for me personally.
Mm-hmm.
Something that Dr. Nahara said that stuck out to me, paraphrasing a bit, but about if you feel imposter syndrome, it's a good thing. It means you're, taking a path that no one's taken before. I think that really flipped a switch for me because I definitely have imposter syndrome all the time. I had a conversation with Dr. Bernier before about how I don't apply to jobs if I've already decided I'm not qualified. And he was like, well, that's ridiculous. Like, apply anyway. You never know. You might check more boxes than anyone else, even if you're not fully qualified. So I think, yeah, hearing that, knowing that, if you feel imposter syndrome, it might be a good thing and to push through it.
That resonated the same way with me. And I'll be brutally honest, San Jose State rejected me the first time for my master's. And I thought, that's it. I'm done. I don't mean to be in this space. I'm never going to be a librarian, even though it's my dream job. Never going to do it. But then I sat with it for like a couple weeks. And then I realized, oh, it's just a paper issue. There was some that didn't take a few of my credits from the university I graduated from. I went back to junior college, took a few credits, applied back to San Jose State and got in. And so I think it was that moment of realizing that, yeah, I was supposed to be there and I am supposed to push through the thing. Not everything is handed to you. And who else is uniquely built for that? Probably first gen students. We tend to know how to push through and how to get what we want after some trial and error. I feel like when Dr. Nakeda said that, it was like, oh, boom, light bulb went on. That's exactly it. It's exactly it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just being able to admit your own failures and the mistakes that you've made shows a lot of resilience. And I think what a lot of people find out later in life is that's a good thing, admitting to your mistakes and those failures. It shows that you are able to grow, and also just admitting to not knowing everything. I think we all put ourselves and others on a pedestal where like, oh, you're supposed to know this, you're supposed to know that. I think it's important to take a step back and realize that we are all people, we are humans, and we make mistakes. And the most important thing is to just learn from them. And just touching on the topic of resilience, resilience is a very common theme in first generation narratives, but, we're constantly being told to be strong, and that can be very exhausting. Have you guys ever felt the weight of that expectation, and how do you balance that resilience with self-care?
My immediate reaction is that I hate deficit narratives. I hate grit and resilience because really what I think it's saying is you're not trying hard enough. And it's not accounting for any of the structural systems that are in place or socioeconomic status or other challenges that students face. I think too of meritocracy and living in a society where we just have to get these papers even if we don't know what we're doing. And what does that really mean? Yeah, so I'm not a fan.
I have to wholeheartedly agree with that statement. I think that there is a lot of, when we mention meritocracy, that is, I've told myself many times, like, oh, I'm just getting a paper. I'm doing this so I can be a librarian, blah, 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 get a better paycheck. That's actually that's not true for me. I actually want this experience to enrich my future, not necessarily for a paycheck. Unfortunately, the society we do live in, yes, I need that paycheck. But at the same time, it's about my love of this, my love of information, my love of librarianship that propels me through. Otherwise, I could just stay where I'm at and do what I do.
I think too, like one of the big things that Dr. Bernier would talk about often too is that we will often kind of gloss over the huge intersection between first gen students and like socioeconomic status and like low income students. And so there's so many of us first gen students who are coming from low income households or poverty in my case. Like it was tough. And so then this like kind of added expectation. And in my case, it's not only like what I mentioned before, you know, being able to like navigate anything that my family finds confusing. There's also kind of this like financial expectation. And I don't want to like make them sound like they're always coming after me for money or anything, but they know that, you know, I've gone and I've done this thing and now I have a good job and my husband and we're doing fine. And so there's always this kind of like, I don't know if expectation is the right word. I don't know how to frame it completely correctly, but it's just that like I've come from there to here. And there's this like, I hate when people are like, how did you turn out so good? And I'm like, I got lucky in a lot of ways. Yes, I worked hard. I'm not denying that I didn't put in work, but like, I got lucky that I picked up the newspaper one day and saw that there was like a new scholarship that they had created and that I applied for it and that I qualified for it and I could go to school. Like to me, that's luck that I just backed up with hard work, because had I not seen that, I could have done all the work I wanted and I don't think I ever would have made it. You know, like I lived on my own since I was 16. So it just wasn't like in the cards to pay for university. And so it's just like for me that it's like not an expectation, but it is in a way that they're like, how'd you turn out so good? And you're doing so good now. And I'm just like, I don't like it. I don't know how to explain it, but it's an icky feeling. Like I just went to school. It's fine. Leave me alone.
Yeah, Laura, I just wanted to touch on what you said about luck. And it's like, I think the narrative around luck itself, personally, I think it needs to be reframed, because you wouldn't have stumbled upon that scholarship and applied and you ended up where you are without having the idea in your head already that you wanted to do this. So, you know, if you're, you know, I think it goes on back on like, you know, if you're not paying attention to something, it's not, you know, in your purview, as I don't know if that's the right word, but like, you know, if you're not paying attention to something, then it doesn't exist, that kind of thing, you know?
So and I think that's extremely true. For me, it was I didn't have money to go to school. I grew up poor, and it wasn't something in my life that I could manage. And I was working. I was a mom. I had to work, so I had a good job at the library that I happened upon. And yeah, a happy accident was that I went to CLA in 2019, and there was a presentation about the Working Scholars Program. And there it was, the possibility that I could finish my bachelor's degree. Yeah, it probably may not have happened if I hadn't have gotten that, but I was already ready to receive it. I wanted it. I wanted it so bad that it was in here. So it happened, and I'm incredibly grateful to that. But you know what? We did do the work. We put in the work. I worked my tail off to finish that bachelor's degree to get to this point.
Yeah.
I think what I mean by luck is just that you can take, I just don't love the idea. Like for one of my first classes I took in my bachelor's, we were discussing socioeconomic status and being able to get to school and being able to break that cycle of poverty. And one of the kids in my class whose parents were paying for his university, he was like, well, why didn't you just get a loan? And I was like, bro, I'm like, you can't just go get a loan. Like, and so for me, it just comes down to like, when I say the luck of it, you know, that the luck that I was in this particular situation growing up, that I qualified for this scholarship, right? Whereas somebody who may have been a peer and grown up in a similar situation, but didn't necessarily maybe qualify or something like that, right? Like, not so much as like a fate type of deal, but like that compared to other people, I was offered an opportunity that maybe they wouldn't have been offered, is I guess kind of how I meant it. But yeah, I definitely did the work, and I'm proud of that. But I think I also just like to recognize that it wasn't just like a get out of bed in the morning and pull up my bootstraps and make this amazing, wonderful life all by myself with no external help. And I did everything and I'm amazing, right? Like there's definitely supports and things that other people maybe didn't have access to as well. But yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely a very thought-provoking answers. And I just want to take a moment to also thank you guys for sharing your stories and personal experiences. Professional and academic identity can sometimes feel at odds with our, cultural identity. And I think specifically when I think about this question is something that Marina mentioned as well about the narrative that we created for ourselves to get to where we are. Have you guys ever felt pressure to, perform in a certain way? And how did you guys navigate staying true to yourselves? And what I mean by that, I think oftentimes as first generation students or even underrepresented students, we have to push out this idea that we are in some way victims, and we have to, even applying to scholarships, we have to talk about, our personal experience that could also sometimes be tied to, trauma. And the idea that we have to share that part of ourselves to get into, certain programs or whatever, how have you guys, dealt with that?
Have you guys seen Bridesmaids when she's like, help me, I'm poor? That's how I felt applying for scholarships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I had to write the to get the thing from the California State Library, I had to really emphasize the single mom aspect. And I felt like that's not necessarily a defining factor of my life. I mean, yes, it is, but it's not something that I carry on with me, shake hands with people. Hi, I'm a single mom. Hi. No, I live my life, and I live my life authentically. So for me, performing is a very, very difficult aspect. But to perform that and to have to reconcile those types of things in order to get something that I want, that's incongruent, I think, with who I am as a person.
Yeah, I have one very specific memory of getting a scholarship where they had like a banquet for us, and we came in with our families, and it was all these people with money, and just like they were so excited to have the scholarship, but it was like we literally all took turns standing up and explaining like our background and what it meant for us, and then they would all like clap like they were so happy to like like we were charity cases. I remember that felt really uncomfortable with my parents sitting next to me. That was really hard to get through.
But then, so this is funny. As we were all mentioning this, it started to also recognize within me how much privilege I do have. And I think sometimes too that there's this layer of, well, I live with tremendous privilege. I'm a white person in the United States, born here. That's a ton of privilege of my own. So in order to also put yourself up to have to talk about a narrative that I am this person and I am that, well, that comes with a tremendous intersection of, well, but I am this thing, but this, I also have a lot of things that come to me without me asking for it. So I might not be the perfect answer or perfect person to answer this question.
Yeah, to me, the narrative when applying to a scholarship is really about like how sad is your story. And now that I am on the San Jose State Latino Alumni Network Board of Directors and fundraising, that's the only way that you can get a lot of people to give money is like, look how sad these stories are. And it's really bothering. I hate fundraising. I hate it. I hate asking people for money, even if it's not for me. I want scholarships for other people. But I wish there was a way, and if people have ideas, that would be great, about like, how can we just celebrate how great these students are doing without bringing up the things that they had to overcome? Like, why does that matter? There are so many other positive things that we could be focusing on.
Yeah. It comes back to like celebrating joy, like actually having joy as part of that conversation. Like, you know, if you're looking at Latina students and celebrating their accomplishments is, I would love to live in a world where that is the narrative and that is the story. Like, look at these achievements. These are incredible. Now give us some money. You know, like in a perfect utopian society, I think that's what I would want.
I mean, sorry, I've also been on that side. So when I graduated with my scholarship, I was like I said, it was a new scholarship and I was the first graduate of the program. And so it was like, we're having a fundraiser and you're going to be the keynote speaker and come on the stage and look what you did and you're amazing. And that was also like not great for me. But that I think comes back to like the, you know, how'd you turn out so good? And so, I mean, because it was still, even though we were like celebrating that I accomplished something, I'm like, I just graduated. Like 500 other people also graduated. And you're not asking them to talk and be like, oh, you know, like, so it was, yeah, it's kind of two sides, like double-edged sword, right? I don't know that there's a way to win without being like, help me, I'm poor, right? Yeah, so it's a bit of a struggle, I think. And like, thankfully I'm fairly comfortable with sharing. And so I was able to like get up there and do the thing and share the story and get the money or whatever. But then it also makes me think of like, I know that there are so many people who wouldn't be able to share. And because they're not comfortable sharing, they wouldn't have access to these same resources that I have. And it sucks. And I don't know that there's a way to fix it. And I think that's the way, unfortunately, scholarships are designed. Like, I remember having a breakdown applying because all the scholarships wanted to know what I had done for my community and all of these extracurriculars that I was involved in. And I was like, I've been living on my own since I was 16. If I wasn't getting paid for my work, I wouldn't have a home. I wouldn't have food. Like, I didn't have the luxury of volunteering and being active in the community as a teenager. And so I wasn't eligible for any of those community-based scholarships. And like, I think that it comes down to what people value, like what society values and where they want to, you know, put their money. Like, I think you have two sides. You have this person is so great, let's help them. And this person is so poor, let's help them. And that's how you get people to give you money. And I think it sucks, but I don't know that there's an answer.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's this feeling of like having to pander towards a certain aspect of society that are able to help you in a certain way. And then there's also, going back to imposter syndrome and knowing when and how to ask for help. And that one way is by applying to those scholarships and, asking for fundraising. So yeah, anyways, big topic. But I do want to shift to a more positive conversation. Now that we've explored these challenges, I want to talk more about moments of pride and impact and legacy. So looking back at your guys' journeys, is there a particular moment where you guys stopped and thought, I'm really proud of myself for this?
I had one recently. After interviewing the students and learning about why they aren't utilizing academic libraries, I figured out some of the things, like it's just about convenience for commuter students because they can't be spending money all day eating food. So they're going to go to the cafeteria where there are microwaves and it's more convenient for them. And I had a conversation with the dean at the library where I work, and she was like, that's something that we can get in here. And so even though I am terrified and exhausted, I'm excited about writing my dissertation because it can result in real change. And that's made me feel like, oh, all of this has been worth it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think for me, it was finally getting that job, the job that I wanted. I, again, was rejected from my employer that is my employer now, which is the Solano County Library System, because I was just a month shy of actually having my diploma in hand. And then once I had my diploma and the job opened back up, I didn't get the job, but I got extra help. And I celebrated that joy because it was like, okay, I'm back in the library. I'm back where I belong. I deserve to be here. And I have made every moment since I was hired about that. It is an absolute joy to do my job. Of course, I can gloss over a ton of things. There's some crummy parts of the job, but I got the one that I wanted, and I work in teen services, exactly what I want to be doing. And that to me is the biggest win of my life. Well, it's not a librarian yet, and that'll be the next step. But at least I know in my heart that's the celebration right there.
Maybe a cliche answer, but honestly, when I got my diploma in the mail, that was the most excited I was. Yeah.
That's not cliche at all. That's like, if you have that thing, you worked so hard for it, right?
Yeah, I mean, as much as certain people want to harp on it, diploma just being a piece of paper, it means a lot because we put so much work and dedication into, that program. We should be proud of ourselves.
Laura, I remember last year when you were about to get your cap and gown. Do you remember when that came in the mail? You actually showed me in a meeting your cap and gown.
Yeah, I was excited.
Yeah.
So graduating from SJSU was my third time having a university graduation, but it was the first time I was actually able to walk across the stage and do the actual graduation thing. And I'm in Canada, so it was a huge deal. Me, my husband, my mother-in-law, and my two kids, we all flew down to San Jose. We stayed for a week, and my kids got to see me graduate, and my husband brought them down to the floor as I walked by, and it was just it was the best experience. And yeah, so that was a really, really good moment for me.
That I sadly did not get to walk across the stage for my bachelor's because it was during the pandemic. So I graduated from my couch. So I'm deeply looking forward to next May when I get to walk across the stage at San Jose State. So that's going to be the most joyous celebration.
And we are nearing the end of our Q&A, but I'd love to hear you guys as a quick piece of advice on this last question. As first generation students, what legacy do you guys want to leave for first generation students, and how do you guys hope to contribute to institutional change as a whole? I know that's a pretty broad question.
I think for me, ultimately, it's about paying it forward. My dad passed away in my first year of college, and so I never got to ask him about the barriers he faced and why he wasn't able to graduate. And so all of my research and my work and academics has been about how do we support first generation students of color who are also low income. And I feel like this dissertation that I will finish somehow will be a way to honor him and all of the sacrifices that my family has made. So that's what makes me feel good.
I think as Dr. Bernier has said, it's extending the ladder down, paying it forward, but also building the frameworks within. I think that's the reason that I joined the first gen group, and that the reason I accepted being chair was because, to me, that's important, is making sure that we are taking care of each other at the same time. The only way we're going to learn how to do better, especially to deal with the imposter syndrome and all the myriad of things that we go through, is to do that together. And that's why Dr. Najeda's presentation was so incredible to me, was knowing that I got to meet this person who just said that. That, to me, is what's important. And while we can hope to change the institution to make those differences, I think us being here together and having these conversations, and then this being recorded so somebody else could watch it, just that right there is important. And then the last thing I will say is to always be authentically you. Don't, that is something that brings people together, is by being yourself and not wearing a mask and not wearing all these things. Be you, and your people will find you.
Yeah. Wow, you guys, we are getting towards the end of our time here with the symposium. What an incredible, inspiring conversations we've had today, from Dr. Najeda's keynote to this panel discussion with Marina, Cassie, Laura, and Casey. We've explored complexities, challenges, and triumphs of the first generation student. We've heard about the importance of resilience, community, which is what we're doing right now, mentorship, and advocating for ourselves and advocating in academic and professional spaces. Your guys' stories remind us of why spaces like this matter. A huge thank you to everyone who attended today, whether you spoke or listened or engaged in any way in the chat. I saw a lot of activity in the chat. I haven't had a chance to look through that yet, so after this, I'll definitely delve into that. First Generation Student Group exists to support and uplift each other. And we encourage all of you guys to stay connected. We did recently create a Discord server. So Chelsea, if you want to drop that in the comments or the chat, everyone, please feel free to join us. Stay connected through our Instagram, our blog, also through LinkedIn as well. Just definitely do not hesitate to reach out. Once again, thank you guys all for being here. We hope this is just the beginning for a lot of you guys in starting these conversations.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Also, as chair of the group, this has been a really wonderful day. I really appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.